My name is Derek Haynes. I'm 37 years old, a senior financial analyst at Westbridge Financial Group, and until 3 months ago, I believed I had a good marriage. I earn $89,000 a year analyzing investment portfolios and market trends. Numbers don't lie. That's what I've always loved about my job. Data tells you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. People, on the other hand, can be remarkably deceptive. I met Allison Porter 5 years ago at our mutual friend Sarah's birthday party. I was the college roommate who showed up late with a bottle of wine, and Allison was Sarah's coworker's plus one, stunning, confident, laughing at something someone had said across the room. She had this way of tilting her head when she listened, like she was genuinely interested in every word. That night, we talked until the party ended and most people had gone home. The chemistry was immediate and undeniable. She was 30 then, working as a marketing assistant at a boutique advertising firm. I was climbing the corporate ladder, focused but lonely. We balanced each other perfectly, her spontaneity against my careful planning, her creativity against my analytical mind. After a year of dating, I knew she was the one. We married at a beautiful vineyard ceremony 2 hours outside the city. Her parents, Richard and Joan Porter, were gracious hosts who seemed genuinely happy to welcome me into their family. The wedding photos still sit on our mantle, Allison in her flowing white dress, me in my navy suit, both of us grinning like we'd won the lottery. Those early years were genuinely good. We weren't just playing house, we were building something real together. We traveled, long weekends in wine country, a 2-week trip to Europe that maxed out our credit cards but created memories I still treasure. We hosted dinner parties in the condo I'd purchased 6 years ago before I even met her. Allison would spend hours planning menus and arranging flowers, transforming our space into something warm and inviting. We talked about children, but always with the phrase, "when the time is right." Allison would stroke my arm and say, "I want us to have more time together first, just us," she would tell me with gentle certainty. I respected that. I loved our freedom, our late-night conversations, our ability to be spontaneous. 2 years into our marriage, Allison made an announcement that seemed completely reasonable at the time. "I'm burned out at work," she said over breakfast one Saturday morning. "The agency is demanding impossible deadlines, my boss is a micromanaging nightmare, and honestly, Derek, I want to focus on us. On making our home a sanctuary," she explained with frustration clear in her voice. I was supportive, we were financially stable. My salary could cover our expenses comfortably, and if she needed a break from the corporate grind, why not? "We're comfortable," I told her, kissing her forehead. "Whatever you need." So Allison quit her job. She threw herself into redecorating our condo with an enthusiasm I found endearing. She joined an upscale gym, Fitness Elite, $200 a month, and started taking yoga classes. She seemed happier, more relaxed. The first change happened about 3 months ago. Allison started greeting me every evening with fresh coffee. Not just any coffee, she'd invested in an expensive espresso machine and would have a perfect cup waiting when I walked through the door. "Thought you could use a pick-me-up after your long day," she'd say, handing me the steaming mug with a smile that seemed genuinely caring. It was a sweet gesture, thoughtful wife behavior, except something strange started happening. Within 20 minutes of drinking Allison's coffee, an overwhelming exhaustion would hit me. Not normal tiredness. This was bone-deep, can't-keep-my-eyes-open fatigue that came on like a freight train. I'd barely make it to the couch before consciousness would slip away completely. I'd wake up hours later, midnight 2 a.m., sometimes 3 a.m., sprawled on the living room furniture with pounding headaches and disorientation that felt almost like a hangover. Allison would be asleep in our bedroom, and I'd stumble there, confused and exhausted. "You're working too hard," she'd say the next morning, concern creasing her features. "Your body is telling you to slow down," she would insist with what seemed like genuine worry. I wanted to believe her. I've handled stress before, college finals, major presentations, market crashes that kept me at the office until midnight for weeks. But I'd never experienced anything like this systematic collapse that seemed to happen only at home, only in the evenings, only after Allison's coffee. But late at night, when I'd finally make it to bed and lie staring at the ceiling while Allison slept peacefully beside me, a single thought would crystallize in the darkness. What if she's doing this on purpose? What? I've spent 12 years analyzing financial data for Westbridge Financial. My job is identifying patterns that others miss, market trends, investment anomalies, the subtle shifts that indicate when something is fundamentally wrong beneath the surface. It's pattern recognition at its most essential level. So when that thought crystallized in my mind, what if she's doing this on purpose? My analytical training kicked in automatically. If something was wrong with my marriage, I needed data, hard evidence, proof that would either confirm my suspicions or put them to rest once and for all. I started documenting everything. I bought a small notebook that I kept locked in my desk drawer at work. Every day I recorded the details. What time I got home, whether Allison offered me coffee, what time I drank it when the exhaustion hit, when I woke up, how I felt the next morning. The pattern that emerged was disturbingly consistent. Coffee offered every single evening. Time consumed always between 8:15 and 8:45 p.m. Unconsciousness onset within 15 to 20 minutes. Wake-up time between midnight and 3 a.m. Physical symptoms, headache, disorientation, cotton mouth. Frequency, 100% correlation. But here's what made the pattern truly damning. The exhaustion only occurred on nights when I drank Allison's coffee. On the rare occasions when I made my own coffee or grabbed a cup at work, nothing happened. When we went out to dinner and I had coffee at restaurants, I remained alert all evening. I started noticing other changes in her behavior. Allison seemed happier lately. She had a glow about her that I initially attributed to her newfound freedom from corporate stress. She'd lost weight, maybe 15 pounds, and was dressing nicer, even when she had no plans to leave the house. She spent more time on her appearance, investing in expensive skincare products and a new wardrobe. When I asked about her day, her answers had become increasingly vague. "Just errands, hit the gym, the usual," she would reply dismissively, but she never offered specifics anymore. Her phone behavior had changed too. It used to sit casually on the counter, sometimes lighting up with text notifications that neither of us thought twice about. Now it was always face down. She'd password-protected everything. When calls came in, she'd step into another room to answer them, speaking in hushed tones. One day, I mentioned casually that I might work from home the following Friday. Allison's reaction was immediate and telling. "No," she exclaimed sharply. The word came out harsher than she'd intended. She caught herself, forcing a smile. "I mean, I have plans, the place will be messy, maybe next week," she backtracked quickly. The panic in her voice was barely concealed. In 5 years together, Allison had never cared about the state of our condo. But the moment that confirmed my worst suspicions happened on a Thursday evening. I'd drunk her coffee and was pretending to be more affected than I actually was, letting my breathing slow and my head drop forward. Through slitted eyes, I watched Allison approach the couch where I sat. She checked my pulse at my wrist, the touch clinical and detached. Then she waved her hand directly in front of my face, watching for any reaction. When I didn't respond, she smiled, not the loving smile of a concerned wife, but something predatory and satisfied. She pulled out her phone and typed a text message. I couldn't see the screen, but I could see her expression as she typed. It was the look of someone who had just confirmed that a plan was proceeding perfectly. I also started noticing financial anomalies. The gym membership was expensive, $200 a month for Fitness Elite. But when I reviewed our credit card statements, I noticed regular charges at the gym's cafe, always mid-morning, always for 2 specialty coffee drinks. Allison didn't drink coffee during the day. Who was she buying that second coffee for? I considered confronting her directly, but my instincts told me I needed more than suspicions and partial evidence. I called Nathan Cross, an old college friend who'd become a successful divorce attorney. "Hypothetically," I said carefully during our lunch meeting, "what would someone need to prove adultery in divorce proceedings?" Nathan studied my face carefully. "This isn't hypothetical, is it?" he asked with concern. I didn't answer directly. "What would they need?" I pressed. "Documentation. Photos, videos, financial records, witness testimony. Something that proves the affair beyond any reasonable doubt," he explained seriously. He leaned forward. "Derek, if you're going through this, you need to be smart about it. Document everything, but don't do anything stupid," he warned firmly. The final piece of the puzzle clicked when I glimpsed her phone screen as she set it on the counter. A text preview showed just enough to confirm what I'd been dreading. "Kyle flexed biceps. Can't wait for tonight, he out yet." Standing in the electronics S. Toward the next day, holding a package of wireless security cameras, the cashier asked, "Home security." "Something like that," I replied. But in my mind, I was thinking, I'm about to find out what my wife really does when I'm unconscious. What? Saturday morning arrived gray and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. Allison announced over breakfast that she was going shopping and would be gone for several hours. "I need to hit 3 different stores," she said, checking her phone. "That new boutique downtown, then the home goods place for throw pillows, and I want to stop by the farmer's market before it closes. Probably won't be back until 4 or 5, she explained casually. I nodded, making appropriate husband noises about her having fun and not spending too much. Inside, I felt nothing but cold determination. She was giving me exactly the window I needed. The moment her car pulled out of our parking garage, I retrieved the package of wireless security cameras from my office closet. 4 cameras total, small, motion-activated, streaming to a cloud account that only I could access. I'd done my research. These particular models were designed to be virtually invisible unless someone was specifically looking for them. I installed the first camera in the living room, positioned behind a decorative plant where it had a clear view of the couch and front door. The second went in the kitchen, tucked between cookbooks on a shelf that overlooked both the coffee station and the breakfast bar. The third camera I mounted in the hallway, disguised as part of a picture frame arrangement that would capture anyone moving between the living areas and the bedroom. The fourth camera was the most important. I installed it in our bedroom, hidden inside a charging dock on the dresser that had a direct line of sight to the bed. I tested each camera meticulously, checking angles, adjusting positions, ensuring the Wi-Fi connections were stable. The feeds came through crystal clear on my phone. Every inch of our condo's main living areas was now under surveillance. By the time Allison returned at 5:30, I was sitting on the couch reading financial reports as if I'd been there all afternoon. She kissed my cheek, chatted about her successful shopping expedition, and began preparing dinner. Everything seemed perfectly normal. That evening, Allison appeared beside the couch at exactly 8:30 with a steaming cup of coffee. Her smile was bright and loving. "Long day?" she asked sweetly, settling beside me as I took the mug. "The usual," I replied casually, drinking deeply. The coffee was perfectly prepared, rich, smooth, with just the right amount of cream. It would have been a lovely gesture from a wife who actually cared about my well-being. I sat back, turning on the television, letting myself sink into the couch cushions. Within 20 minutes, the familiar heavy-limbed exhaustion began to overtake me. My vision blurred at the edges. My hands felt disconnected from my arms. My head grew impossibly heavy. I passed out completely. I woke at 2:30 a.m., sprawled across the couch with a pounding headache and the taste of cotton in my mouth. Allison was asleep in our bedroom, breathing deeply and peacefully. With shaking hands, though whether from residual drug effects or anticipation, I couldn't tell, I pulled out my phone and opened the security app. The footage was waiting for me. 8:47 p.m., Derek drinks coffee, settles on couch with TV remote. 8:52 p.m., Derek's movements become sluggish, head nodding. 9:03 p.m., Derek's head drops forward. No movement for 30 seconds. He's unconscious. I fast-forwarded slightly. 9:15 p.m., Allison approaches the couch. She reaches for Derek's wrist, checking his pulse with practiced efficiency. She waves her hand directly in front of his face, watching for any reaction. When there is none, she smiles, a satisfied, predatory expression I've never seen before. 9:20 p.m., Allison pulls out her phone and sends a text message. She types quickly, then sits back to wait. 9:35 p.m., the front door opens. A man walks in without knocking, clearly expected. He's tall, muscular, mid-30s with dark hair and the confident stride of someone who belongs in gyms and fitness magazines. I recognize him immediately. Kyle Brennan, Allison's personal trainer from Fitness Elite. 9:37 p.m., Kyle and Allison embrace in our living room, their kiss passionate and familiar. This isn't a new relationship. They move together with the comfort of established lovers. Kyle glances down at my unconscious form and says something that makes Allison laugh. Even without audio, I can see the contempt in his expression, the way he looks at me like I'm pathetic debris in their path. 9:42 p.m. They walk toward our bedroom, Kyle's hand on Allison's lower back in a gesture of casual ownership. 9:45 p.m., the bedroom door closes. I fast-forward through the next 2 hours, my hands trembling with a rage so pure it feels like ice in my veins. At 11:02 p.m., Kyle emerges from the bedroom, pulling on his clothes. Allison follows, wearing a silk robe I bought her for our anniversary. They kiss again at the front door, his hands tangling in her hair. 11:56 p.m., Kyle leaves. Allison watches him go, then locks the door behind him. 11:58 p.m., Allison climbs into our bed and goes to sleep, as peaceful as if she'd spent the evening reading. I watch the entire sequence 3 times. Each viewing intensifies my fury, but also my resolve. My wife had drugged me unconscious. She'd brought her lover into our home, our bedroom, our bed, and they'd laughed at my unconscious body lying mere feet away. But I don't confront her. Not yet. I need more than video evidence. I need proof that will hold up in court, evidence so overwhelming that no lawyer could create reasonable doubt. The next morning, I act completely normal. I kiss Allison goodbye, tell her I love her, head to work as if nothing has changed. But inside, I'm calculating, planning, building an unshakable case. That evening, she brings me coffee again. This time, before the drug takes full effect, I manage to save half the mug's contents in a sealed container while Allison is in the shower. I document the chain of custody with photographs, date stamps, and detailed notes about the collection process. 3 days later, I send the sample to Mitchell Forensics, a private lab that Nathan had recommended for divorce cases requiring toxicology evidence. The results arrive via encrypted email. Zolpidem, Ambien, 20 mg concentration, enough to render an average adult unconscious for 4 to 6 hours. The report notes that this dosage level indicates intentional administration rather than accidental contamination. Intentional criminal. I call Nathan immediately. I need to see you, emergency, I tell him urgently. In Nathan's downtown office, I present everything. The security footage on my phone, the forensic report, the financial records showing Allison's gym expenses, and the mysterious double coffee purchases. Nathan's expression grows progressively harder as he reviews each piece of evidence. Jesus Christ, Derek, he says, leaning back in his chair, processing what he's seen. This isn't just adultery, this is assault, possibly attempted poisoning. With this evidence, the district attorney could press criminal charges that would stick, he explains gravely. What are my options? I ask. My voice is steady, but Nathan can hear the steel underneath. Divorce-wise, this is a slam dunk. Adultery, drugging, reckless endangerment, she won't see a penny in the settlement. But Derek, you could also pursue criminal charges. Assault, reckless endangerment, illegal drug administration. They're looking at potential jail time, he outlines carefully. I stand up, straightening my suit jacket. I want them destroyed, both of them, I state coldly. Nathan leans forward, studying my expression. What exactly are you planning? He asks with concern. I'm going to catch them in the act one more time, and I'm going to make sure they regret ever touching what was mine, I reply with quiet determination. Nathan's voice carries a note of warning. Derek, don't do anything that could jeopardize the legal case. Don't give them ammunition to use against you, he cautions seriously. I meet his eyes directly. 2 nights from now this ends. Make sure the police are ready for my call, I tell him firmly. I walk out of his office, leaving Nathan staring after me. I know he's concerned about what I might do, but he doesn't understand. I'm not planning to jeopardize anything. I'm planning to ensure that justice is served with the kind of finality that neither Allison nor Kyle will ever forget. 2 nights later, I arrived home from work at exactly 6:15 p.m., the same time I'd been coming home for the past 5 years. My hands were steady as I turned the key in the lock, but underneath my calm exterior, every nerve was alive with anticipation. Allison greeted me at the door with her practiced smile, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before that hugged her newly toned figure. She'd spent extra time on her hair and makeup today, I noticed. She was preparing for her performance. Rough day? She asked sweetly, taking my briefcase and setting it by the door. The usual quarterly reports, I replied evenly, loosening my tie. Nothing I couldn't handle. She disappeared into the kitchen, and I could hear the familiar sounds of the espresso machine grinding and brewing. 5 minutes later, she appeared beside the couch with a steaming mug, her smile warm and concerned. Thought you could use a pick-me-up after your long day, she said lovingly. I took the mug with both hands, letting my fingers brush against hers in the gesture of a loving husband. The coffee was perfectly prepared, as always. Steam rose from the surface, carrying the rich aroma that had once been comforting and was now associated with violation and betrayal. I walked to the couch, TT led into my usual spot and turned on the television. When Allison turned away to tidy the kitchen, I poured every drop of the drugged coffee into the large potted fern beside the couch. The plant had been absorbing Allison's poison for days now. Its leaves were starting to yellow, but it would survive long enough to serve as evidence. I sat back, letting my breathing slow gradually, allowing my head to drop forward in stages. Weeks of watching my own unconsciousness on security footage had taught me exactly how the drug was supposed to affect me. Within 15 minutes, I heard Allison's footsteps approaching. I kept my breathing deep and regular as she reached for my wrist, checking my pulse with the clinical efficiency she'd developed over months of practice. She waved her hand in front of my face, waiting for any sign of consciousness. When I didn't react, she whispered a single word that chilled my blood. Perfect. The satisfaction in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't just about the affair. She enjoyed drugging me. She took pleasure in my unconsciousness, in the power it gave her over my life. She pulled out her phone and typed a message. I could hear her moving around the living room, probably tidying up, preparing our home for her lover's arrival. 10 minutes later, the front door opened. Kyle Brennan walked in without knocking, as comfortable in my home as if he lived there. "He out?" Kyle asked casually, his voice carrying the tone of someone discussing the weather. "Like a light," Allison responded confidently. "I used a little extra tonight. He won't wake up until 3 or 4, she added with satisfaction. Kyle laughed, a sound filled with contempt and amusement. "Man, you weren't kidding about this guy being pathetic. Look at him just sitting there," he said mockingly. "Tell me about it. Sometimes I wonder what I ever saw in him. He's so predictable, so boring," she replied with cruel dismissal. They were discussing me like I was a piece of furniture. The disrespect, the casual cruelty, the complete absence of any recognition that I was a human being who had loved and trusted them both. It crystallized every ounce of rage I'd been building for weeks into something cold and focused. "Come on," Allison said seductively, her voice dropping to the sultry tone she used to use with me. "We've got time." They kissed 5 feet from where I sat unconscious, their hands roaming each other's bodies with the familiarity of established lovers. Kyle's hands were in her hair, on her waist, places that had once been mine alone to touch. They headed toward the bedroom, Allison's laughter echoing down the hallway. Kyle said something else that I couldn't make out, but their combined laughter felt like acid on every nerve ending. I counted to 30, then stood. My movements were silent and deliberate. I walked through our kitchen to the door leading to the attached garage. My hands didn't shake as I retrieved the Louisville Slugger baseball bat I'd bought 3 years ago after a rash of break-ins in our neighborhood. 34 inches of solid ash wood. I'd told myself it was for home security. Tonight it would serve exactly that purpose. I walked back through the house, past the living room where I'd been drugged, down the hallway where family photos showed happier times that I now knew were illusions. The bedroom door was open about 6 inches. I could hear them inside. Allison's voice, Kyle's deeper tones, the sounds of betrayal happening in my bed, in my home, in the life I'd built. I pushed the door wide open. They were on the bed, Kyle on top of Allison, both naked, both completely absorbed in their betrayal. The sheets were the ones I'd bought for our anniversary. The pillows were where I laid my head every night. They froze when they saw me standing in the doorway. Neither of them screamed immediately. There was a moment of pure, crystalline silence where the reality of their situation hit them like ice water. Kyle's eyes went wide. Allison's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I didn't say a word. There was nothing to discuss. I swung the bat. Crack. The sound of ash wood connecting with Kyle's ribs was sharp and final. The impact reverberated up through the bat into my hands, a sensation I felt in my bones. Kyle screamed, a high-pitched sound of shock and agony, and rolled off Allison, hitting the floor beside the bed. "Derek, stop!" Allison screamed in pure panic, but I was beyond hearing her. I swung again, this time hitting Kyle's left leg just above the knee. The crack of breaking bone was audible throughout the room. His femur snapped with a sound like a tree branch breaking in a storm. Kyle was sobbing now, trying to crawl away from me, one leg dragging uselessly behind him. Blood was coming from his mouth where broken ribs had likely punctured something internal. "Please, stop, please, I'm sorry," he begged desperately. Sorry, as if apologies could undo months of betrayal, of drugging, laughing at my unconscious body, while they violated my home and my marriage. I grabbed Kyle by the arm and dragged him, naked, broken, bleeding, down the hallway toward the front door. His screams echoed off the walls, probably audible to our neighbors, but I didn't care. Let them hear. Let them know what happens to men who think they can destroy other men's lives without consequences. Kyle left a trail of blood on our hardwood floors as I dragged him. When we reached the door, I opened it wide, revealing the well-lit hallway of our upscale condominium complex. "If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I said quietly, "I'll kill you." I meant it. Kyle could hear that I meant it. He crawled out into the hallway, naked and broken, sobbing and bleeding, trying to pull himself toward the elevator with one functioning leg. I watched him for a moment, then slammed the door and locked it. When I turned around, Allison was standing at the end of the hallway, clutching a bedsheet around herself, tears streaming down her face. "Derek, please," she whispered desperately. "I'm sorry, it was a mistake. I made a terrible mistake. Please don't," she begged. I walked toward her. She backed away, but there was nowhere to go. "Derek, I love you. I've always loved you. This thing with Kyle, it didn't mean anything. It was just... I was confused. I was lonely," she pleaded frantically. I grabbed her by the hair and dragged her toward the door. Her feet scrambled for purchase on the floor, the sheet falling away, her screams filling our home. "Derek, no, you can't do this. I live here. This is my home too," she screamed in protest. I opened the front door and shoved her out into the hallway where Kyle's blood was still wet on the carpet. I threw her clothes after her, the black dress, her underwear, her shoes, everything landing in a pile beside her naked, sobbing form. "Don't come back," I said firmly. I slammed the door and engaged every lock, deadbolt, chain, door alarm. The silence that followed was the most peaceful sound I'd heard in months. Allison pounded on the door, screaming, begging, threatening to call the police. I sat on the couch, the same couch where she'd drugged me dozens of times, and called Nathan. "It's done," I said when he answered. "I have everything on camera. I'm pressing charges." Nathan's voice was tight with concern. "Derek, what did you do?" he asked anxiously. "I defended my home against trespassers. Everything is documented. Call the police. Tell them I have video evidence of assault, drug administration, and criminal trespass. Tell them the perpetrators are likely in need of medical attention," I explained calmly. I ended the call and immediately uploaded the evening's security footage to the cloud servers Nathan had arranged. Every moment was captured in high definition. Allison checking my pulse, Kyle entering without permission, their casual discussion of drugging me, and my entirely justified response to finding criminals in my home. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Allison had managed to get dressed by then, but Kyle was still in the hallway, naked and semi-conscious, leaving a spreading pool of blood on the expensive carpet our homeowners association would have to replace. Officer Maria Santos took my statement while paramedics worked on Kyle. I showed her the security footage on my phone, the forensic report proving I'd been systematically drugged, and the financial records documenting months of deception. "Mr. Haynes," she said after reviewing everything, "you understand you could be charged with assault?" she asked seriously. "Officer Santos," I replied calmly, "I found 2 criminals in my home after being drugged unconscious. One of them was trespassing, the other was systematically poisoning me. I defended myself and my property. Everything is documented," I explained matter-of-factly. She nodded slowly. "We'll need you to come to the station for a full statement," she informed me. "Of course, should I call my attorney?" I asked politely. "That would be advisable," she replied professionally. 2 days later, Allison was arrested at her parents' house. The charges were extensive: assault with intent to harm, reckless endangerment, illegal drug administration, and conspiracy to commit assault. The evidence was overwhelming, the forensic reports conclusive, the video footage undeniable. Kyle was arrested at the hospital where he was recovering from emergency surgery to repair his shattered leg and internal bleeding from broken ribs. His charges included criminal trespass, conspiracy to commit assault, and accessory to drug administration. His personal training career was over. His athletic activities were finished. He would walk with a permanent limp for the rest of his life. The district attorney offered them both plea deals to avoid the expense and publicity of a trial. Allison accepted 3 years in state prison. Kyle took 18 months, though his medical expenses would bankrupt H. I am long before his sentence was complete. I filed for divorce immediately. With Allison's criminal conviction and documented adultery, the proceedings were straightforward. I kept everything: the condo, our savings, all marital assets. Allison was left with nothing but a prison sentence and a criminal record that would follow her forever. Richard and Joan Porter called me the week after Allison's sentencing. "Derek," Joan's voice was broken, aged by shame, "we're so sorry. We had no idea what she was capable of. We've cut her off completely. She's not welcome in our home," she said with deep regret. I appreciated the gesture but felt nothing toward them. They were collateral damage in their daughter's destruction, but they weren't my concern anymore. As I watched Allison being led away in handcuffs, she looked back at me one last time. There was no apology in her eyes, just shock that she got caught. I felt nothing but satisfaction. 2 months after Allison's conviction, I sold the condo. Too many bad memories lived in those walls: the couch where I'd been drugged, the bedroom where I'd been betrayed. I bought a small house in a quiet suburb 30 minutes away. Fresh start, clean slate. I began therapy. Dr. Alexander Hall helped me process the trauma, not just the betrayal, but the violence of my response. I didn't regret what I did, but I acknowledged it changed me. I was harder now, more guarded, less willing to trust. I reconnected with old friends I'd neglected during my marriage. They were supportive, if somewhat shocked by the story. Most said I did what I had to do. A few suggested I went too far. I didn't care about their opinions. I started dating again, carefully, slowly. I was upfront about my past. Some women were scared off. Others found my honesty refreshing. I took my time. There was no rush. Financially, I was thriving. The divorce settlement left me with everything. I invested wisely, continued working at Westbridge Financial. My boss knew the full story and had been supportive. I occasionally checked in on Allison and Kyle through public records. Allison was serving her sentence at a women's correctional facility. No early release likely. Kyle tried suing me for the injuries, but dropped the case when my attorney reminded him that he was trespassing and committing a crime at the time. Kyle now worked at a supplement store, his training career destroyed by both his injuries and his criminal record. I felt no guilt, no remorse. They drugged me, violated my home, laughed at my unconscious body. They earned every consequence they received. In my final reflection, I address you directly. I'm 39, divorced, and free. Some people say I went too far, that I should have just called the police. But those people weren't drugged. They weren't betrayed in their own bed. They don't get to judge. My advice is simple. If someone betrays you, document everything. Protect yourself legally, and make sure they face consequences. Justice isn't always gentle. Sometimes it's delivered with a steel baseball bat, but it's necessary. I'm at peace now, building a new life on my own terms. The foundation is solid this time because it's built on truth, not lies. Trust is the foundation of marriage. But when that trust is poisoned, sometimes you need to burn everything down and start over. I did, and I've never looked back.